Should see NW-OCTA, Oregon Trail Explorations, Blue Mountains, Oregon, May 23rd to the 26th, 2022.
Got it.
And the view from Escolpa Viewpoint to the east, looking out toward the Whitman route over the Blues. Okay. Here's our location map. And I always put this in for people who join or aren't from Oregon, because I had some questions on that once. So the big red arrow showing the general area in Oregon. And here a little more specifically is the route over the Blues. Let me get my laser pointer going here. Can you see my laser pointer?
Yep.
Circling around the word Meacham. The Grand down here in the lower right, Grand Ronde Valley, Pendleton up here in the Umatilla Valley. This is Hillgard State Park, the Blue Mountain Crossing Interpretive Center, Meacham, and Lee's Encampment. Here's Emigrant Springs State Park and Dead Man's Pass here. And you've seen this before, but this is a profile of the National Park Service route going over the Blue Mountains from about 3,000 feet in the Grand Ronde Valley, 42 miles over the Blues down to about 1,500 feet on the Umatilla River. And some of the waypoints along the way, Hillgard, Blue Mountain Crossing, Lee's Encampment at about mile 25, and Dead Man's Pass rest stop, etc. And quite a bit of preparation to put together our agenda. We had to identify areas to search, and we were there, and of course for this trip we were there in 2021, so we had already searched some areas, so we wasn't too big a task. We had to obtain landowners' permission, and we researched historical mapping efforts, which Dave referred to earlier. And we used some new resources and methods and finally devised a day-to-day plan. Some of our areas were suggested by our previous efforts the year before that. And we used a LiDAR map provided by the National Park Service and marked possible rut locations on a CalTopo map for guidance. There were some new areas we had to visited before, and we also considered additional exploration of places that we hadn't been. Obtaining landowner permissions was a big job, and Dave Welsh did this for us. And we used parcel data from Terrain Navigator Pro and CalTopo, contacted via email, and quite a follow-up. Some landowners didn't respond. Dave could comment more about this, I'm sure. Now, our previous efforts in June of 2021, we'd explored the Oregon State Highway Department route from the late 50s, 3 separate exploratory hikes. Dave referred to this before. We found no trace of this route as it was shown on their published map. And we walked the Westminster Woods Church Camp route south to near Ross Road. We were there actually with the Park Service because the Westminster Woods Church Camp had asked them to verify the ruts that were on their property that they had marked as the Oregon Trail. And we determined this to be the toll road as documented in the GLO surveyor notes from a couple of years, 63 and 87. And these were covered in my February NW-OCTA presentation. If you need a link to that presentation, email Dave and he can send you a Dropbox link. Using new resources and methods, LiDAR, of course, National Park Service LiDAR map that we obtained from the Park Service. We used GPS tracking. Several participants took GPS tracks, and we took photos. So we configured our smartphones to embed location information. It's important possibility when using smartphone photos. And of course, we went over the early GLO maps and surveyors' notebooks that were available online, specifically the 1864, 1882, and 1887 GLO maps and the surveyor notebooks that went along with these, with the maps. And I marked the immigrant, toll, and stage road locations on the CalTopo map, which I had on my smartphone as we explored. Day-to-day plan I came up with. Our first day, May 24th, we searched for the ruts documented by Jack Evans in his Powerful Rocky book. And the next day was a very big day. We started off with Mark Miller led us on a hike to the springs across the freeway from the park. And we also looked at some ruts at Highway 30 and Westminster Lane, which I'll show you pictures of later. And we explored the Robinson property, which is east of the freeway, north of Beecham. On the 26th, we explored the Connor and Cook properties near Dead Man's Pass. We also came back along Highway 30, and Sam showed us some rut locations along there that he knew of that I hadn't seen. And here specifically is our day-to-day plan. Let me see how this works. Hopefully it doesn't crash Zoom. Our first day was out on the Jack Evans ruts. Here we have the park right here. You can see the freeway here. Very faintly, you can see the pipeline, which is a linear cleared area, cleared of timber right through all of this area. And the red here is our route. Later in the day, we went over and looked at the toll road ruts near Westminster Woods Church Camp, which is right here in the purple. Next day, we hiked into the upper part of Escopo Creek to the other Emigrant Springs with Mark Miller. We also came down to about in this area. I'll show you later on another map. Looked at some ruts there, and in the afternoon went over here and explored the Robinson property here, which is some ruts that essentially connect this orange PL, which stands for Pendleton Grand Wagon Road, between this and this, interrupted, of course, by the freeway. In our final day, we were up here at Dead Man's Pass and exploring the Connor and Cook properties up here. So that was our agenda. Started off with the Jack Evans ruts, and these are actually located west of the state park. And again, documented in his book, Powerful Rocky. He's got copies of the USGS maps in the back of the book, so we use those extensively. And these were along the 1959 Oregon State Highway Department route. And we also, a bonus, we hiked a portion of the toll road from the park headquarters to Westminster Woods. And I'll show you that on this map here. On this map, the Jack Evans ruts are shown as the black squares here. In his book, Powerful Rocky, he's got the route coming through here following the OSHD 1959 route. And he's got, red circles on the map for the route. And then he has red kind of rectangles for visible ruts. And these black squares here represent the visible, the portions that he labeled as visible ruts. And that's what we were here to explore. We started from the park, came out here, crossed the pipeline, followed a road out toward the Herbie's cabin. And then when we got down here, I decided that we needed to go down here to catch the southern part of this route. So we walked by the Herbie's cabin and started down here, and then sort of zigzagged our way up through this area. The red is my GPS track, and the green is Richard Hunt's GPS track. Looks like he varied this a little bit, and that was the idea, was to go back and forth across this, since we didn't really know where it was. And the the original map is very large scale, so when they put a dotted line on a map and you match it with this map, the dots are about 550 feet wide. So it was not a very exact map for location wise. This also shows what we did later, coming down here to the Emigrant Springs State Park office location and walking out to the toll road, the Ruts location here. This was marked by the surveyors as being a stage road.
Robin?
Yeah.
Going back to where you walked the Jack Evans route, and those dark black marks, did you see any evidence of any ruts in that area?
Well, let's take a look at it. We did not, to anticipate the answer. Most of the ruts, this location, the OSHD route west of the park, and the Jack Evans ruts are on this Hancock Forest Management area, and they allow people on the property to hunt for mushrooms and cut firewood. At this time, the road was closed, and the sign here, they hadn't updated it for 2022, but we walked out there anyway. And this is we're on our way out there to the to the south end of the Ruts location in the Urbis cabin. See Sam Pambrin in the lower right, and Jenny, among others. And here we're starting the exploration. Richard Hunt and Jerry King. This is the Hancock timber management road that goes north and south, kind of through the area. Our Ruts locations cross this road. And this is an example of the most of the terrain that we went through. It had been logged and replanted with ponderosa pine. You can see the saplings kind of spaced through the area. There didn't appear to be a whole lot of disturbance to the ground, so I was confident that if there were ruts, we would find some trace. And here we're back on one of the timber management roads here, having a conference before we move on. And we, as I say, we did not find any evidence of ruts.
So that's really interesting, because didn't Jack Evans say he saw visible ruts on his notes?
That's what he indicated on the map. Yeah, and that's what the black squares on the map that I showed you represented, was those areas that he indicated there were visible ruts.
So that's really confusing. Is what did he see that he thought were ruts? I guess.
Well, his book was published in 1991, so sometime before that.
Interesting.
So after not finding any of Jack Evans' ruts, we needed to see what ruts looked like. So we went over to the Emigrant Springs State Park, the office location, and walked out to the toll road and hiked north to Westminster Woods. Here we are leaving the toll road, leaving the office location here. Richard Hunt and Chuck Flood, and some of us ahead there. And we're on the toll road here, documented by the in this particular area, documented by the surveyor notes as being a stage road. And we're heading north to Westminster Woods. You can see one of their signs here. They've marked it the Oregon Trail. Here's Sam and Richard and Chuck. And we walked through the Westminster Woods area and followed it further west to through all of the stage road locations. And this is essentially what it looks like. It isn't driven on by, you know, pickup trucks or ATVs or anything. This is on this particular portion of it is on the church camp property. So the next day, Mark Miller led us on a hike to the other Immigrant Springs across the freeway from the park. And we started from old Highway 30 overpass and hiked south into Upper Esculpa Creek to find the spring. And I'll show you a location map here. This is the park down here. This is the springs in the park. And this is the springs that he led us to down in the upper part of Esculpa Creek. It's labeled Squaw Creek on this map. We have a couple of spring locations, and I believe there is one at the head of this branch of the Upper Esculpa Creek. But we started here near the overpass and hiked down through here. And this is us starting out. There's a pipeline that goes through this area. Also a power line access. You see the power lines up here, but this area has been cleared. I think in this particular area, maybe because of the power line, or it could also be the pipeline. And we followed a fence line down into Upper Esculpa Creek to the spring. And here we have a copious water flow coming out of the side of the hill and eventually flows down into, this is Upper Esculpa Creek. Now Mark prepared a series of documents for us on, you know, his research into the history of the Immigrant Springs themselves, and going over those documents, it's obvious that, it seems to me anyway, that it's obvious that there's quite a bit of controversy and contradictory information about the springs and where they are and where people camped. And I've asked Mark to say a few words about that. Can you pipe in, Mark?
Absolutely. First, thanks for having me. I hope everybody can hear me.
You're fine.
What really led to it was an article from the East Oregonian, I believe from about 1970, that mentioned Larry Smitten, who I think most of you all know, that did a lot of the mapping in the late 50s. Smitten had a conversation with Frank Bowman, who I believe died in 1965. And they were talking about the springs of the park, and Bowman got to saying that the actual springs that the pioneers used were across the road, and he led him down to an area, and the article clearly explains it. So I was curious about that, so I started tracking across the other side of the interstate looking for that springs, and eventually found it. And the interesting thing to me was the best time to go down there, and I think I mentioned this on the hike that we took in May, because it's still pretty wet there in May. The best time to go down there is in late August, early September, when everything else is just bone dry. And those springs were running when I went down there for the first time in the summer of, I guess it would have been summer of 21. So certainly pointed to that area. The article also talked about the fact that a pipeline had gone through there. I think that happened in the late 50s. So everything just added up, and it made a lot of sense. And then when you looked at it on a map and you looked at the fact that there's water there, it would make sense that there would be an encampment somewhere in that area. A lot of the signs just kind of added up. Also, if you look at the diary entries as well, I started going through a lot of the diary entries, and as you guys know, when you look at When you look at the diaries, it's pretty clear where they crossed the Grand Ronde, and it's also usually pretty clear where Lee's encampment is. And if you follow it from there, you could make some conclusions on some of it. And I think I gave everyone copies of the 7 or 8 different diary entries that I believed corresponded to the Emigrant Springs area, which are actually referred to as Camp Springs in a couple of them. But in one in particular, it talks about a spring off to the right of the trail down in a deep ravine, which again corresponds quite well to where this spring is.
Mark, was there any evidence that you found or anybody of where maybe a possible encampment would have been in that area?
To me, it would make a lot of sense that it would be between the 2 springs, the one in the featured one in the state park and the one that I led everyone down to. And I even kind of speculated that the one in the state park, the featured one, it's kind of in a flat area. I could see where it would make sense that would be for stock. It would get kind of murked up, whereas the one across the highway sort of trickles down into Esculpa Creek, and you could fashion it almost in a way where it's kind of a constant water flow of good water. So when you looked in between and you looked at the terrain, and it's difficult because I-84 goes right through the heart of it, but you can kind of piece together, especially when you walk around out there as much as I have anyway, you can kind of see the excavation that was done for the highway and sort of picture what it would have looked like prior to interstate construction. And it just kind of adds up of a nice flat area, a nice area for an encampment.
What's the distance between the 2 springs?
Maybe quarter mile, half mile at the most.
Okay.
But it's all essentially been covered over by the I-84 construction.
But you're saying, Mark, that there's probably at one time there could have been a nice flat area between the 2 springs.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I can provide a link to Mark's document. I'll stick that in the chat at the end of the presentation. I think I can do a link. I think I remember how to do that. Well, after going down into the spring, we also went over to there's some ruts along Highway 30 near the junction with Westminster Lane. And it's in between the Highway 30 and I-84. And these were also found by Mark. And they're in the right location for the Emigrant Road, even though they're close to the freeway. Some photos here. This is Highway 30. Westminster Lane goes off the left of the picture over here. You see the freeway back here, and the ruts are down here by this pine tree. This is Mark's photo. Here's another one that I took a little further down, showing the swale. Here's a LiDAR map. They show up pretty clearly on the LiDAR map. It's showing the location. Here's Westminster Lane going down to the church camp and the Emigrant Springs park office location.
I think it's noteworthy too that ponderosa pine that's adjacent to those ruts there, I would guess it's somewhere between 250 to 270 years old. The fact that it's still there would tell us that there wasn't any excavation by highway construction in that particular area, at the very least. But so is close. The root system kind of protrudes out into the swales themselves, and they appear somewhat disturbed. And they're also heading right towards the featured spring of the state park. And it also lines up with the old survey notes of what was labeled, Pendleton to LeGrand Wagon Road. And once again, if you look at the terrain and try to take I-84 and US 30 out of the equation and just kind of look at the terrain and what it would have looked like prior to that, it makes sense.
Yeah, like I said, they're in the certainly in the right location for the Emigrant Road through this area. Now, it's curious that the and I've talked about this at length in one of my previous presentations, but it's curious that the Oregon State Highway Department route and the Park Service route both go significantly, say, most of a mile west of the park and not through this area. So I, for one, think that it did go through this area, but that's my opinion. Well, I said this was go ahead.
I have a question for you. Have you mapped distance between Lee's encampment and north of the park based on the the highway route, the Oregon State Highway route that was marked, and then the shorter that we're talking about? Because I think just by looking at the map, it would have been about a half mile shorter, go through via US 30.
It actually was, and I can show at the end. I'll switch over to my CalTopo map, and we can take a look at that. It's most of a mile shorter and more direct to go, following Highway 30 from Meacham, say, up to the park area, rather than detour over to west of 2 Mile Creek and up the hill and over the top of the hill and going down, west of the park. That was something that I covered in my previous presentation, so I won't dwell on it here. But I'll show that CalTopo map at the end, and we can have a further discussion if we have time.
How were these labeled on the GLO maps? Did you say they were labeled toll road?
Well, which was labeled? The
ruts we were just looking at between the US 30 and I-84.
They were not in any surveyor's notes. They're not on a section line.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're
not on
close to one of the survey notes, though. There's one just Pendleton to LeGrand Wagon Road.
Right. And that'll become obvious on the CalTopo map when I show that. They're the orange PL circles that I have on my maps for Pendleton to LeGrand Wagon Road throughout the whole area. So the afternoon we spent at the Robinson property. This was on the other side of the freeway, actually, just between there and Highway 30, north of Meacham. They show clearly on the LiDAR map, and they connect two of these points that we're just talking about: the Pendleton LeGrand Wagon Road, the 1887 GLO map for this particular township. They go further north and south, and what I've shown on the map, but we didn't have landowner permissions to explore further. So that's another exploration if we want to do that. And this sort of covers it. The red here is our GPS track of where we explored. The freeway going through here. Here's the prominent pipeline through the whole area, just west of the church camp here. The toll road I've referred to here, going through here, it's about 3 miles of ruts. Pendleton LeGrand Wagon Road, surveyor note here, one up here, and just off of the map up here is the the ruts that Mark was referring to that he found between the freeway and Highway 30. So this is a kind of a logical progression through here if we follow these survey notes. This is a survey note for the Emigrant Road from both the 1863 survey. There was an 1863 survey to establish this line here, which is the Willamette baseline, so that the 1864 survey could be done. This is a toll road surveyor note location from the 1864 survey saying that the toll road went northwest. And that's why I think that this is a toll road, even though the 1887 survey labeled it a stage road. So between this survey note and these survey notes is about, well, 1887 minus 1864, 23-year gap. So this survey note for Emigrant Road is from 1863, and it was also noted on the 1887 survey of this township here, saying that the Emigrant Road went northwest from this location, which is why I think it followed, more or less, followed up through here and to Emigrant Springs. Here we are on the Robinson property, following the kind of the ranch road out to where the ruts location was that we saw on the LiDAR map. And here's Richard and Brenda Garrick from the state park. At the first part of the ruts here, Richard's standing in the ruts. They go from right to left across the across the photo. They also go to the right off the photo, actually onto the other property. Mark started to explore that, but we called him back because we were headed down this way to the south. And it brought us out onto
known to trespass, Robin.
What's that?
I've been known to trespass and not really care.
Well, I didn't take any photographs, so it's not documented. This is out into a field of this yellow flowers. This is actually coos. It's a lomatium, one of the Indian biscuit root plants. You can see back here the freeway, and we sort of lost the ruts as we went out into this flat area. And they are, I think, actually here, but the flowers sort of disguise them, and I'll show that in a couple of slides here. Jenny and Chuck Flood. This might be the rut here. This is a Google satellite view taken later in the year. We were there in May, and it shows here what are probably the path of the ruts here. There's another one over here. But we came through, I believe we came through, well, up here a ways. And the ruts, I'll show this in a minute here. The ruts come through these trees here. They're very obvious here. They're obvious in the trees north and south of this area. But they cross a 2 Mile Creek here. And then keep going here. You can actually see them in this. But they're more obvious here. Very, very shallow. I don't know whether you could call them ruts or not. They would be a linear depression, I suppose. And here we're kind of heading down toward 2 Mile Creek, and the ruts are obvious once we get into the trees. And here we are at 2 Mile Creek. And this road, these ruts are not driven on by pickup trucks or ATVs or anything either. I didn't see a lot of evidence of cattle on the land here, but Richard is standing right in the middle of the ruts here, with Sam to his right. Okay, so these are a very good, linear, I guess, set of ruts is what you call them through this whole area. And if we look at the surveyor notes, these correspond with the Pendleton and LeGrand Wagon Road as documented on the 1887 surveyor notes.
I think the Met terminology for that is swale.
Swale?
You don't have the two tracks really. I mean, you can kind of visualize them, but it's really the depression, like you say. But I think swale is the term that's used.
Isn't depression also a category?
I muted. It could be.
Okay. Well, that was a pretty full day. That evening we actually had a dinner at Valerie Connor's in Pendleton and got to socialize. And her husband cooked us a very, very nice meal. Very pleasant. But the next morning, we were out evaluating ruts on the Connor property and also the Cook properties, which I'll show you in a minute. Showed the Pendleton and LeGrand Wagon Road here. This is all on the same map, the 1887 GLO map. And the western end of the ruts were adjacent to the Dead Man Pass rest stop. This is the eastbound rest stop, where some of you may have stopped and gone over the what do you call it, a turnstile or whatever, over the over the fence to look at the ruts over there. The turnstile's gone now, but the ruts are still there. And this is a this is the map here. This is a CalTopo map here with the USGS map in the background with the GLO maps overlaid onto it, and with the opacity turned down so you can see the background map, the background USGS map. The freeway coming through here, pretty obvious. And this is Highway 30, the single red line, Pendleton and LeGrand Wagon Road survey notes here. Okay, and this is this blue line here is where they documented the Pendleton LeGrand Wagon Road, and I've kind of highlighted it coming through here. The blue is the Connor property, and the red here is the Cook property. The black is our track through, our GPS track through the area. The rest stop itself, eastbound, is right here where I have the highlighter. So those ruts that you may have walked over to see in years past are right over in here. And here we are going onto the Connor property. This is Valerie here and other participants. Down into there's a sort of a little valley here, and kind of going up the other side. We did encounter a rock pile that we speculated might be a grave, but I didn't include that. And so my protocol is not to show grave locations in my presentation, so I didn't show that. Going up the other side, we start to see some ruts here. This person, I think this is Brenda Garrick, going up through the ruts here. And Jenny a little bit further up in the ruts. And Jenny again, as we go kind of get into the timber here, but the ruts are quite distinct in this area. And we come up to this is a gravel road to the Cook property. And I think it's Brett Cook, and his house is off to the right there. And this field on the other side. Here's a kind of a slight depression, I think, going across here, nothing real obvious. And we get to the timber again, and these are the ruts above the eastbound Dead Man Pass rest stop. There's actually four sets of ruts going down through this area. At the rest stop is down in here. You can't see it. You can see, I think, a little bit of the freeway through here. Okay, well, our next steps.
Robin, before you leave that, how do you relate, you've labeled this as the Pendleton-LeGrand Wagon Road, which in other people's map is the Immigrant Trail. How do you relate those two?
How do you relate those two? I think they're the same.
Are there places where the Pendleton-LeGrand Wagon Road is different from the Immigrant Trail in this area?
In this area, no, not really. Further south there, and I alluded to it earlier, you know, the Oregon Trail, according to the National Park Service and the Oregon State Highway Department, goes west of the park, where I think it goes you know, through the park and along Highway 30.
Right.
But it definitely varies there. And I can show you better on the CalTopo map when we're all done here.
Okay, thank you.
Get to that. There's definitely ruts on this property. In our next steps, I did some solo explorations in August, which I'll probably should do a presentation on. Went up on Pelican Creek, northwest of Hillgard, Blue Mountain Crossing. I went up there and hiked down the hill to the south and up the hill to the north, and documented that in the OCTA marker locations. And the toll road east of Highway 30, north of Camella. The toll road kind of goes through there, and I've kind of found some spots there. And also, there's some Emigrant Road going through there and some OCTA markers, so I can show those. And some ideas for 2023 explorations for the toll road and Pendleton-LeGrand Wagon Road. I want to explore kind of the southern end of this, the Stabler property north of Ross Road. And in 2021, we weren't able to get on this property because we didn't have permissions, but the Pendleton-LeGrand Wagon Road and the toll road both sort of start right there north of Ross Road. But it would be really nice to get in there and see just what's what on that property.
So do we still need to try to get permission from the stablers?
Yeah, and Mark Mulvihill knows the stabler, so I think we want to work through him.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, you know Mark?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was my boss.
He was your boss. Okay. Yeah. Immigrant Road, north of Highway 30, north of Meacham, Golter and McIntyre properties. There's a surveyor note location just labeled Wagon Road through there, but some of the GLO maps actually route the Emigrant Road through that marker, but it's on these people's property now, so that would be good to go out there. And the Emigrant Road near Pelican Creek, the Cantrell property, which is kind of on the north end of was on Pelican Creek on the north end of where some of the Forest Service land is. I couldn't go on that. And the Forest Service property from, say, Pelican Creek south to Hillgard, over the top of that hill, there's OCTA markers out there too, but I'd like to explore that. And I didn't in August because by the time I'd hiked around there and gone up Pelican Creek and over to the the campsite location as noted by there's a campsite location, Jack Evans campsite locations. It was later in the afternoon and much too hot to go out in the across the ridge in the hot sun, so I didn't make it up there. Okay, questions. Well, there have been questions all along, so let me go. I'm going to end the show, and where am I going here? Here we are. Okay, on my meeting chat, Diane Lesarge, Coos is pronounced Koosh. Are there consequences for landowners if ruts are located on their property? None that I know of, other than a sense of pride.
Right.
Possibly.
Some are more proud than others.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and I want to go, oh, there's those 3 dots. There we go, full screen here. Everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, the map. Okay, and we were looking at, oh, let's see here. Yeah, here's the, south of this red line is Township 1 South, Range 35 East, and which was surveyed, the whole thing was surveyed in 1882. Now, this green area, sections 3 and 10, was surveyed in 1864. The Willamette baseline here was late 1863, and I referred previously to this Emigrant Road, old Emigrant Road, course north 40 degrees west, and the number of chains east of the section corner, and who the surveyor is Timothy Davenport, and in the 1887 surveyors Kern and Noland here. And this surveyor note for the toll road from Umatilla to Grand Ronde bears southeast and northwest. And that's this away. Okay, here's our exploration on the Robinson property here. And there is, let me do one thing here. One of the things that I did was, let's see here. Collapse some of these so I don't scroll forever. Was using the National Park Service LiDAR map is I marked a whole bunch of LiDAR, what looked like roads or tracks, you know, on the LiDAR map on here as a future reference. And you can see over here some of the tracks over here. And if I'm thinking here that the Emigrant Road goes northwest from here, I'm thinking over here and then basically over here like this. So, but that's an hypothesis. But all of this through here, from here, Pendleton-LeGrand Wagon Road to here, this little camera symbol right here is or the rest that Mark found. So how they fit in with, here's the Emigrant Spring here, we in the park, Stage Road, surveyor note location up here. So through here, rather than over here. Now, let me put, okay, this red broad line here is the Oregon State Highway Department route that we didn't find any ruts on. And the black dots are where Jack Evans said he found ruts that we didn't find. Surveyor notes. No surveyor notes for anything crossing in this area. The only surveyor note on this section line is up here, the Stage Road, what I'm calling the toll road. Coming across over here, there's a wagon road documented here, but nothing over here. And similarly up here, you know, nothing up here. Stage road over here. So this route here, this is also the National Park Service route, seems to me to be highly problematic.
You're being too kind.
What's that?
You're being too kind.
Am I? Trying to be diplomatic. Yeah. This blue line here for what I'm calling the toll road here, this is the Stabler property down here that I want to get on and explore, is very definite. It goes for about 3 miles through here and goes through the Westminster Woods Church Camp property here.
Now, you pointed out early on that the parts of it on the church property are labeled Oregon Trail, which we don't have any, unless the toll road did overlay an earlier Oregon Trail. That doesn't hold up either, right?
It does not, to my way of thinking.
Yeah. The church has not responded. We reported all this to the church, but they haven't.
Yeah, now I invited Dave Powell to be on this call. I'm not sure whether he made it or not,
Yeah.
but I think he understands. He understands all of that. He is certainly knows about surveyor note locations and all of that, because he wrote a small book, actually, a paper on the silviculture in the Blue Mountains, and he referenced the surveyor notes in his in his paper, because they documented, for instance, when they set a section corner, like right at this location, they documented what kind of trees they were. There was 4 kind of witness posts, and they documented what species the trees were. Occasionally, and I'm not sure about in this area, but I know in the Mount Hood National Forest, when they did surveys there, they noted especially large trees. Like you'll see here's an 8-foot ponderosa pine. It's 8 foot in diameter. That type of thing, just unusual things. So he is well aware. And what else did we want to look at this map for? Anything else? We have a chat question here. Couch. Coos is couch. I don't know. I've been saying coos for years. Sam, is that couch? Oh, maybe Sam left us.
Robin, I think it's noteworthy to point out the survey note close to the ruts that I found there between 84 and 30, just how close that survey note is to that 1887 survey note that's Pendleton-LeGrand Wagon Road. And also point out that just to the left and just to the right of that, the terrain is pretty steep. So it would make sense that it would have gone right through that area, which is really what led me to looking in that area to begin with, was the fact that I thought, it must have gone through in that general area.
Right. They would not have gone, for instance, down into Escopa Creek where we hiked, going through here. And one of the objections, of course, other than the ones I brought up, was, this National Park Service, Oregon State Highway Department route, why would they go up a hill like this, go across this 4,000-foot knob and down into this gully and back up the other side when they could have gone through the flat area over here? Doesn't make any sense. But going across here, this is kind of a rim above the, above the Escopa Creek Ravine, and you mentioned a pioneer diary that says that they went that there was water down in a ravine to the right of the trail. Well, here's the stage road documentation here, Pendleton-LeGrand Wagon Road here, more Pendleton-LeGrand Wagon Road here on the north side of the Robinson property. And basically on this Township 1 North, Range 35 East, the 1887 survey, the Oregon Trail is referred to mostly as the Pendleton-LeGrand Wagon Road. Okay, but this is in 1887, and people are using that road. For purposes other than immigration. Going both ways on the road. We know that down here in Meacham, the Meacham brothers purchased a house here in that would probably be in 1862, and moved up here. And then they built a couple of years later, they built another larger hotel and also a stage station, which was right in this area. So, and one of the reasons they did that was because gold had been discovered at near, it'd be southwest, about 8 miles southwest of Baker City. Became the town site was called Auburn, and I think they had 10,000 people there at one time, but it was fairly brief because of the gold discovery. But a lot of people were going east on the road, and that's why the Meacham brothers built their toll road and made improvements, because they would get a toll from all of the freight wagons going over to supply the mines, and also from all of the people going over there to the mines. So there was quite a bit of eastbound travel on the road starting in 1862. It didn't last for a whole long time, but it's one of the reasons why people eventually settled out here. I think one was LeGrand, actually. I think they were there, and the guy, his name was Brown, and this town was referred to as Brownsville, I think, at first, but LeGrand was actually incorporated, I think, in 1864, but there was people living there before that. Pioneers going west, coming through the Grand Ronde Valley, a lot of times talked about in their diaries that this would be a really great place to settle, but it was too far from anything, from other settlements and other civilizations. The Whitman mission, of course, was gone in, that was 48, after that, so it wasn't anything close. But after, thousands of people went over to the gold rush, or the gold discovery near Baker City, and also the Idaho mines, this became more populated, and people felt comfortable coming over and homesteading the Grand Ronde Valley, as well as the Powder River Valley, etc. Sam, do you have any thoughts on that? Oh, maybe Sam's not.
I don't think Sam's in anymore.
Okay, he left. Okay, I'm sure if he was here, he would comment. But that's barring any other questions, I think that's the end of my presentation.
Very, very good. It's been amazing how much we've learned up in that area from what appeared to be a fairly simple campground. There's an awful lot more there.